There's an art show tomorrow. The two walls that are hanging in the back, there's going to be about 3 more of those right here kind of floating in the middle of the space, displaying some artwork. And they were in here all week installing lights, and it's really going to be a cool event tomorrow night if you can make it back. But we do expect to do more art shows here at CL Space now that we have the wonderful, beautiful walls, courtesy of Tempest Projects. I'd like to bring up the creator of Storytime, if she's here and ready to introduce the wonderful readers and talent we have for you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for Julie Yuristo.
Thanks for coming. I don't know if I guess you're aware of the theme tonight. We're celebrating National Poetry Month, but because I'm kind of a stickler for our format, it's not a poetry night per se, it's prose about poetry. So we've enlisted poets and other writers and people around town to talk about the poetry that inspired them or things that I guess they feel are poetic to them. So I'm really appreciative of the lineup we have. It's a great cross-section of really great people with great minds, and I'm excited to hear them. And I met our first reader a couple years ago when I worked for TBT, when I interviewed bands, his band Redliners, for which he's a guitarist and lead singer, excuse me. And it's a really good band, like punk, rockabilly kind of mix. And they're going to go on tour, and they should have a gig around here sometime mid-June. And what I like about him is that he describes himself as a fat orange cat, big man, but he also has a record label called Fat Orange Cat, and he owns a fat orange cat named Cameron, who's 8 years old. And he also describes himself as a guitar slinger, witless poet. He lives in Stepner, and the quotation on his Facebook page is from Johnny Cash, which says, "I stopped giving people advice after I told Roy Orbison to lower his voice and change his name." Okay, give a warm welcome to Justin Little.
How you doing? I'm gonna walk around a little bit. I'm usually anchored by a guitar and a mic stand, so put me up there for an hour, I'll be rolling around on the stage. So, my grandfather, he passed away from Alzheimer's. He died of pneumonia, but he passed away from Alzheimer's. And the thing about Alzheimer's is that it comes on slow, and noticeably slow. And you notice symptoms, but you don't realize what they are until it progresses a little bit. And the first symptom that I noticed, but didn't realize, were the broken promises. See, he was a hat guy. My grandfather was a hat guy, and he was he was in the prime of adulthood during the 40s and 50s. So I guess all guys were hat guys then, but he was a New York hat guy. So his caps and fedoras were custom fit by some of the best hat makers of his era. And but as the culture becomes a little bit less formal, the hats they get put in boxes and they get put in bags and get stuck up on the top shelf of the coat closet for about 30 years until I found him. And one hat in particular caught my eye. It was one of those wool floppy newsy hats, the ones with the stitched down brim and the button up top, the extra kids wear. And see, I was living in Cleveland at the time, in this small neighborhood, real traditional, 50 houses, kind of a Norman Rockwellian existence. And this was pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-Nintendo. So I made snowmen, and I went Christmas caroling, and I swam in lakes, and I raced turtles, and I climbed trees, and I joined the Cub Scouts, and I had a paper route. And I thought nothing better would go with this paper route than this hat. So I asked my grandfather, so can I have this hat? He said, yes. So I was stoked. For the next 3 days, I was cruising around the house wearing this hat. And until it was time for me, for my family to go back to Cleveland. And we're getting ready to leave. And my grandfather says, put the hat back where you got it. And I thought, you're kidding. And I laughed. And my granddad, and he says, no, put that hat back where you got it. So my grandmother at that point pipes up and says, why did you promise the boy the hat? He told me he could have the hat. He goes, no, I didn't. Put it back. All right? So I go put the hat back. And you know that moment in your youth when the adults in your life cease being infallible grown-ups and become, you realize that they're just damaged adults. Well, that was this moment for me. I'll tell you why. Because I'm driving with my parents back to Cleveland, and I'm confused, and I'm asking my parents, why would Grandpa give me the hat and then take it back? Because it wasn't the fact that he took it back that bothered me, it's the fact that he acted like I'd taken him without permission, and he had no recollection of this conversation that we had. And my mom, who's his daughter, and perhaps a bit prone to sugarcoat things, says, wow, you know that's just how he is. And my dad, who's his son-in-law, and perhaps not quite as prone to, he's probably a little bit more prone to give it to me straight, says, I'm sorry, son, he's an asshole. So he's just an asshole. That's what we chalked it up to. Along with a litany of other similar instances. The second symptom that I noticed, but didn't realize, was his hygiene. He would go out and work in the yard all day and sweat like a pig and get yard filth all over him. And when he came back in, he wouldn't shower. And I don't mean he wouldn't shower when he came back, right when he came back in, or even after dinner, but he wouldn't shower for like 3 or 4 days. And he was never a filthy guy, you know, and we weren't going to say anything to him about it, but we just didn't understand how he could be comfortable. And pretty soon, the behaviors and eccentricities that you attribute to an aging man develop or worsen. You start realizing that maybe it's something more. Maybe it's something that's a bit more neurological in nature. And one day he called my uncle and said, I can't find your mother. Have you seen your mother? I can't find your mother anywhere. And there's some old lady walking around this house. Who is she? And then there's 3 days that go by where he doesn't recognize his grown daughter, his own daughter. The only thing he keeps saying is I can't quite place who you remind me of. And if you don't know what's happening to him, that could be offensive. But what's actually happening is that his mind is attempting to rectify the memory of his youthful daughter with the image of his grown daughter, attempting unsuccessfully. And then you begin to realize that these eccentricities and behaviors that you're attributing to be that of a grouch or curmudgeon were actually the symptoms of a man who is losing his mind. And that's how it begins, with snickers and grudges, until you realize what's happening. And how it ends, I don't know. I can come to terms with the passing of my grandfather. There's an old story. A young man visits a wise man and says, what is the secret to happiness? And the wise man answers, grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. And the young man says, what? That's horrible. Why would you tell me that? What does that have to do with happiness? And The wise man answers, death is part of life. And death in anything other than that order will result in maximal suffering. Grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. So yeah, so I can come to terms with the passing of my grandfather. What I'm having a difficult time doing is coming to terms with the fact that Alzheimer's is hereditary. And that means that I might lose my mind. And who are you without a mind? Your mind is where your personality resides. When faced with a difficult decision, the cliche is, look in your heart. What does your heart tell you? But we all know that your heart doesn't tell you shit. It's your mind that tells you what to do. So when that goes away, what are you left with? Who are you? So, thinking about that, I wrote this. My mind is one of a kind. It's left my body behind. My bones creak and I grow weak, but I still got my mind. My waist grows thick and I grow sick. For once I was fit, now I look like my mind is still mine. From the night I was born to my first midnight born, I've had the same mind. I've had the same mind. I have the same mind. But someday I will die and my body will dry. But somewhere there will be my mind. And the youth that I feel, the youth that my body cannot steal, will still exist, will still persist. Into the cosmos I will fly. Thank you.